preparing to live stream the meeting right now. All right, so it looks like we are live on YouTube now. I'm just going to mute that. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. If you are joining us live, my name is Rosemarie Oakman. I am the founder and director of the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project, a cross-generational community arts project that is now in its 8th year. And I am very fortunate to be joined by 3 incredible artists this evening who have all been absolutely influential in the development and the progress the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project has made over the last 8 years. So we are very excited to have them here with us this evening. All of these artists have work in the Collective Memory exhibition. That is an exhibition that started in, did it start in April? No, it started in March. So it began in March. It's been up all of April, and it will continue to be up through the very beginning of May. So you'll have time to check out that exhibition virtually. And then we've had a series of panels. This is the 3rd and final series in the series of the panels this evening. And you'll be able to go back and watch the other 2 panels as well as this one at a later date if you don't have the full evening to be with us tonight. So thank you all so much for being here. One of the very important mission points of the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project is to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease. It is a slow, deadly, degenerative disease of the brain. And right now, according to the Alzheimer's Association, 1 in 3 seniors in America is dying with Alzheimer's or another dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term. Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia. And more than 6 million Americans right now are living with that disease, Alzheimer's. One very scary statistic is that deaths caused by Alzheimer's and dementia have increased by 16% during this pandemic. So I think all of our hearts go out to everyone lost during the pandemic, and especially to those in the memory loss community and those who may have passed away in long-term care. So thank you again for being with us, and I'm going to let the artists introduce themselves. Jenny, do you want to tell us a little bit about where you're calling in from tonight?
Absolutely. I'm Jenny Hillenbrand. I live in Cambridge, New York, which is about an hour north of Albany. I'm the program director at Salem Artworks and also a multidisciplinary artist. I met Rose at Alfred University, where I started metal casting.
Maria, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Maria Bentley. I am zooming in from Hornell, New York, where I live and have a maple farm with my partner. And I work at Alfred University, located in Alfred, New York, and I am the Arts Enrollment Specialist Assistant Director in Admissions. And I met Rose at Alfred University, and that's how I get connected to the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project.
Thank you so much.
I'm Amber White. I am here in Osceola, Wisconsin, which is about an hour outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul, just across the river from Minnesota. And I met Rose at Franconia Sculpture Park in 2015 when we were both iron artists in residence. And at that time, my mother was a few years into diagnosis with Alzheimer's related dementia. She was diagnosed when she was 58 and passed away at the age of 65, just before the COVID pandemic. So I'm just grateful to have crossed paths with you and to have been invited to be a part of this. And it's something near and dear to me.
Thank you so much, all of you. And thank you so much, Amber. We'll look at Amber's work a little bit later in this presentation, but if you've been following Alzheimer's Glass and Iron on social media, or if you've seen the exhibition, Amber's work is really the inspiration behind this exhibition. When I met Amber in 2015, she had created this series on making memories. And as an artist who was working in the metal arts, as well as a lot with the idea of memory loss and memory as a concept in my own artwork, I had never seen someone put into creation such a visual representation of Alzheimer's disease. So we'll get to all of that a little bit later, but what an absolutely stunning body of work that has been present in my life since I met Amber really in 2015. I've always had that work centrally located in my house, and it reminds me of why I do what I do every day. So thank you so much, Amber. So I'm going to share my screen now, and the artists are going to cue me when they want me to go to the next slide. So right now I just have our material memory panel. This is, again, the third in a series of 3 panels, and the other panels are available on our YouTube channel. So we are going to just jump right into our discussion, and we are going to start with the amazing Jenny Hillenbrand.
Okay, so I already introduced myself. I'm a multidisciplinary artist who has a background in ceramics and metal casting. I now primarily work with drawing, photography, and sculpture. And then I also have a collaborative process that does more performative work and social-based work. So really, I started casting metal at Alfred University with Coral Lambert. Coral Lambert taught an environmental foundry class, and it made me think a lot about waste and reusing material and how I could connect with this process in a more thoughtful way. So this work here was taking the mold remnants from objects that I had made and assembling them. Next slide. This work, it was really just kind of abstract and had windows. I was interested in showing the process of the bottom of the mold, the sides of the mold, the top, and how the metal, you couldn't really predict how it would move, but you could visualize it. You could go to the next slide. I think one of the things that really got me interested in metal casting was partially the metal, but really the community. I really enjoyed sharing ideas and techniques with other artists. Coral brought us on a variety of field trips, and so we got to see a lot of different places that produce metal, and we had a lot of shared experiences. This work was a collaboration with Chelsea Buffard, where we made a garden. You can go to the next slide. And we grew vegetables. And so we were thinking about how to make a sustainable practice and self-sufficient practice. You can go to the next slide. Thinking about this exhibition and the material memory, I got less interested in kind of abstract castings and started to think about how I could use the material to record this community. So with Chelsea, she gave me parts of her molds, and so she was casting corn stalks and had grew up on a farm. And so this piece was kind of an homage to her and a memory of working with her, where I captured her process. You can go to the next slide. So I would take her molds and I would cut them down into parts and pieces that could get assembled. I was thinking about how the metal would flow, and then again, trying to do it in a way that I wasn't incorporating more materials to be resourceful. You can go to the next slide. I continued to play with this idea, collecting other people's molds, fragments. So, this is of a cigar holder. You can keep going. And I was just interested in showing all the marks and the imperfections of how the metal interacted with this mold material. You can keep going. I moved away from capturing other people's process and thought about objects that would have meaning for me. And so at the time I was working a lot. It was a very laborious practice, and I was thinking about labor and kind of this continuous amount of energy that we put into our lives, working 24/7, having electricity. And so I cast a series of light bulbs. You can keep going to the next one. I cast a lot of light bulbs, over I think 100 or 200. You can keep going. And it generated a lot of sand mold waste. So that was great for my practice. So you can go to the next slide. So I made a very big mold. It was the biggest mold that I had made. And I don't have a picture of the finished piece, but I just wanted to show that I kind of started with a light bulb and then was able to return to that idea of like capturing the image. And so this is a detail of kind of a suspended light bulb within this casting. So you can go to the next slide. I guess I moved away from recording specifically other people's practice and the community side, and got back into kind of approaching this from a drawing perspective. Also at the time I was encouraged to learn more molding techniques. So this is a stacker mold. I actually was working on this when Rose was at Salem Artworks doing doing the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron project. So you can go to the next slide. So I was basically like cutting and assembling these molds, and you can go to the next slide. And it was to get like a more fragile piece, but I actually just really loved the mold material itself and the images that were left on it. So you can go to the next slide. And so it was capable of going from like a really heavy mold to a much lighter mold. You can go to the next slide. I'm gonna like zip through these ones. I think this is a shared sentiment, but casting metal is really hard on the body. And so I was starting to get rashes on my hands and some respiratory issues. So I kind of took a break from metal casting. I still love it as a medium, still involved in the metal conferences. But I started to look at nature and my experience with nature. You can go to the next slide. And it just really returned to drawing. So this is more like very recent work, just thinking about drawing as I would with metal casting from that experience. So I'm trying to create layers. I'm thinking about the flow of material. You can go to the next slide. You can actually kind of go through, well, I'll just cue you, but so like still thinking about this fluidity of material, how material moves, kind of visualizing a three-dimensional space on the page with the material. You can go to the next slide. And for me, it was like a connection between how I was assembling the sand molds and kind of getting into this like very deep meditative space, thinking about what wasn't there. Can go to the next slide. And also just thinking about the limitations of material, the fragility of the material. And for me, it's just like a kind of a way of, I guess you're just like really just thinking about the material at hand, and you can kind of let everything else go that you have on your mind or you might be thinking about. You can go to the next slide. And you can go to the next slide. I'll zip through 10 minutes, that's my goal. And so, yeah, and then also just playing with different materials. So this is just clear on black. You can go to the next slide. And just moving into like the piece that I involved, that I included in this exhibition, I have been trying to learn digital media. And so I really enjoy different processes and moving in between them. And so I was taking these drawings that were inspired by the metal casting and then putting them into a digital form. And I'm interested in cutting out these pieces. Again, I'm kind of trying to create like a three-dimensional space within this flat area, but I'm also thinking about how to not use materials. And so working in a digital way allows me to do that. But you can still produce multiples in a similar way to other processes. You can go to the next slide. And my grandfather, so this piece that's on the left, so I actually lost my grandfather this year, around December. He had, I would say, Alzheimer's or dementia. It wasn't diagnosed, and it wasn't like a consistent memory loss. But for a long time, we connected on a shared memory of my car breaking down. And so my dad and my grandfather came to pick me up on the side of the road. And for a really long time, he, like, if I brought up that happening, he would know who I was. And sometime in the last couple of years, we didn't have that memory, and my grandfather became very shy. And so I was very appreciative of having listened to some of the presentations that Rose had shared at SAW, and just knowing her, because she talked a lot about kind of like reframing the way that you think about your interactions with people. And it really helped me to process the transition that he was going through. Let me go to the next slide. And so, like, just over this year, I've been thinking back on a lot of experiences that I've had. And even though I'm not actively working with metal, I would say that being a part of that community was really transformative for me, and it allowed me to imagine what's possible in any kind of material, and to appreciate the connections that I have. This piece on the right is a photograph of this giant pile of sand. And why I took it was just, at the time, I was kind of taking mold waste and looking at all the images of what people had cast. And it was this, like, it just showed just how diverse and how hardworking people are, and they just go to whatever means possible to be an artist, to make. And I guess in some ways it's sentimental to me and represents these that the memory that I have, or the experience that I've had with the metal arts community, but also connects it to, I guess, this meditative space of, like, thinking about how things connect. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for this opportunity to talk with you all.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was absolutely beautiful to see such a range of your work, and how you've really incorporated reuse of material with that material memory. Like, your mold waste is one of those materials that you're actively using, where I think some people may think that that's just a material that you use in the process and then it's kind of thrown away. I think that you really bring that material memory with you within the art you're creating. And I know I said it to you before, but again, I'm so sorry for the loss of your grandfather, and our heart goes out to all of your family who lost him. And this is a group of artists who have all had memory loss in their family. I think that's something that unites everyone here on this call this evening. And we'll continue to expand on that a little bit in our conversation later on. But now I'm going to give the floor over to Maria Bentley.
Awesome, thanks, Rose. So my work is based in mixed media sculpture. So I work pretty much in anything and everything that I can get my hands on. I also work in photo as a form of documentation, and drawing, sketching, really anything and everything. I just love material and love to sculpt. So this piece is called Bottom of the Barrel, and this piece really resonates with my own self of identity. So this piece is really what I see as a self-portrait. So a lot of my work is based in ceramics, but also has elements of glass and light and elements of metal as well. So I love mixing really those three materials: ceramics, metal, and glass. I love how they interact with each other, and also the fact that they all involve forms of heat in order to transform the material. This piece in particular was based off of an apple bushel. So the piece is ceramic. That's what the bushel is ceramic material. Underneath there's neon tubing, which is creating the light. there's a metal band around the bushel, and then there's also apple slices underneath on the neon. And it really creates this really fragrant, aromatic experience in the gallery. A lot of my work is also inspired by my upbringing. I was born and raised in the Finger Lakes, surrounded by water and the earth and farming. I was also raised Catholic, so a lot of my inspiration really sees ceramic material as a figurative element. I really think of ceramic as representing that dust to dust, that material that, you know, we're all coming from the earth and we will all go back to the earth. I think that's something that I really believe in our identity and how we exist within the earth that we live on. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a great detail shot of this piece. The one thing I really love about ceramics in particular is the memory that it holds amongst itself. So the fact that you can really manipulate this material in multiple ways. So I really was trying to capture the essence of wood in a ceramic form. And I really just love the detail here. And then I was able to bisque and cold finish this piece to really get this really fantastic aging that is represented within wood, but embodied in the ceramic material. Next piece. Yeah, so my grandfather was an artist, and he's really the reason why I was inspired to study the arts and to become an artist. He was a painter. So I grew up painting with him and going to galleries and really thinking about forms of self-expression. And this is a portrait of my grandfather. I know my portraits are not in the figurative sense traditional, but to me, the ceramic material really embodies the vessel and that figurative quality. And he did have dementia, which then developed into Alzheimer's. And there was one moment in particular that I remember where he got up really, really early and he was peeling these bags of potatoes. He was also a veteran. So at one point in his service, he must have found himself peeling these bags of potatoes for the mess hall. And I just remember him having this like very intense moment with these potatoes, just the precision that he had. It was like he was painting. He was also an engineer by trade. So he had his calipers out and was like measuring the potato peels and just really beautifully like peeling these potatoes. It was such a magical and like artistic moment. He really had no cognition in that moment, but just to see him making with these potatoes was something that was really magical. And is where ceramic potatoes come into my work. So this is also where I first started exploring and experimenting with burnouts. So this is a burlap sack that I sewed together and then dipped in slip and then fired. So for me, this is really reminiscent of what it means to have Alzheimer's and dementia. You become a shell of yourself. What was once there no longer is. And for me, having this object that is dipped in slip, dipped in this earthen material, and then fired in the kiln, and then comes back out a shell, for me was just this very ephemeral experience. And the attention to materiality really represents to me that life to death, back to the earth materiality that I resonate with the figure. And then if you go to the next piece, you can see a detail shot. These are all ceramic potatoes as well. So I filled the sack with these ceramic potatoes. And the chair is actually my great-grandfather's chair. So my great-grandparents were immigrants and they came over from Italy, and this was my great-grandfather's chair. So I thought it was fitting to put my grandfather in my great-grandfather's chair in the kitchen peeling potatoes. So this is a very figurative piece for me. Next piece. And so this piece is called Dust to Dust. And this piece really was thinking about levels of consumption, how we consume as individuals, how we consume from the earth, how we consume on a daily basis material and different images and content. And I was thinking about that level of production and shipping. And I have these sacks here, kind of like what's left after shipping. So the pallet, maybe within produce, crates or trash cans, waste, thinking about those kinds of elements. And then always having a light element within my pieces. The light represents this juxtaposition between the earth and materials and something that is more industrial and more on the long lines of maybe something that is less organic. And then this piece was actually an interactive piece. So I invited the viewer, if you go to the next slide, to pick up apples from the gallery. And I was thinking about, how do I really push the figure within this piece without having a figure necessarily represented? And so I had viewers grab an apple, eat the apple, and put it in the trash can that was on the pallet. And this is all ceramic, the trash can. And then over time, the apples were collected, and there was just this great kind of collection of these apples that had been consumed and added to the waste that was on the pallet. So it was really a great community piece and a collaboration with the community, thinking about waste and compost and returning back to the earth. Next piece. Yeah, so this is one of my most recent pieces. This is the last piece I did before the pandemic. Again, burnout, slip casting. So these are all rags that I had been using in the studio or within my house. My mom really loves to cook, and we call them mapines. So I was thinking about what happens to these pieces of fiber that are so essential to the studio or so essential to cooking in the kitchen. So these cleaning materials that we have that are touched by so many hands, and what happens to them once we throw them out, they're gone. So I kind of wanted to capture that moment of just this simple piece of fabric and what that holds, that memory, that hand, that touch. What spill did it clean up? Whose hands did it clean? What materials were on them? Just really thinking about that sensitivity to memory and touch with these pieces. Next slide. And so my past 2 years, I've been out of the traditional studio sense, and I've been building a house with my partner here in Hornell, and really thinking about memory, working with the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project. A lot of the folks that we work with that have dementia or Alzheimer's will talk about their most prominent memory is of home and what that means to them. And so building a home from scratch really has fostered a lot of memories for me and a lot of respect and understanding for that building process and the earth. I'm also really inspired by Earthworks and really thinking about how we move land and how we move material, what we insert into the land and what we get back from it. And also thinking about where we come and respecting those land acknowledgements of those who came before us. So this piece, yeah, it's my biggest piece thus far, is my home with my partner. And we're finishing it up right now, but we built everything from the ground up. We have about 40 acres that we own, and we also have a maple farm on that property. So it's been really great to kind of explore and experiment and think about these kind of industrial materials, but with more sensitive touch to them, really thinking about they're going to make the home that I'm going to live in. Next slide. Awesome. Is that it?
Okay. And then
Thanks,
we will touch later on in the presentation about a collaborative project going on between the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project, the Memory Maker Project, as well as Maria's Maple Farm, Maple Marrow at B&T Farm. So we'll get to that a little bit later on in the presentation. But for now, I am going to spotlight Amber and move on to her segment of this presentation.
Thank you, Rose. The first handful of images that I'll discuss are in the virtual exhibition, Collective Memory. Um, One of my very earliest memories is of prairie burns and controlled burns. My dad was a firefighter, and I remember going along and sitting in the truck and waiting. Maybe my parents didn't have a sitter that night or something, but sitting in the truck, waiting, kind of like fiddling with my toys and watching these fields burn, not knowing why, of course, at that time. Now I know the benefits of that. But so fire is definitely one of my very first memories, and I consider it a material. These images were made just after he passed away, not related to Alzheimer's, but during my first year of grad school at the University of Minnesota. I was working in the foundry there, and my background's actually in photography. So I was trying to sort of force a marriage between photography and metal casting and see what could happen between these two materials. These photographs were all snapshots and images that my dad had taken. He was always the one holding a camera, and I found a big box of them at his house after he passed away. Some images that I remembered, and some I had no idea that were photographed. And what I wanted to do was sort of explore these two materials and explore loss. My mom had been diagnosed already at that point. So I altered these with molten aluminum. And this one happens to be an image of me on my 5th birthday. And if you go to the next one, sometimes the tiles themselves, the aluminum was very interesting. It sort of formed a frame around what was the photograph. And sort of the point of it was an intentional memory loss. I had never experienced or worked with somebody directly who had dementia, and seeing my mother go through memory loss was very foreign and very new. And so developing some type of like empathy and trying to understand what that felt like was important to me at that time. So these images, if you'll go to the next one, these are all images that were lost in the process. And some of them, the image is partially left over. Like this is me at a Halloween, maybe when I was 8 or 9 with a witch hat on, and there are some pumpkins next to me on the steps. But some of them were almost completely destroyed. If you'll go to the next one. The negatives of these images either were missing or they were also destroyed in the process. So I have no original, no scan. And yeah, the intent was to lose the memory and to kind of come to terms with that loss and the loss that was happening in my life at that time. I rephotographed them all to create these images because the material was so fragile. They're definitely not archival. They're like 1 hour drugstore photos. So who knows what chemicals or materials were even in them. But I rephotographed them on a camera stand to get some really nice detail, and to have this now as the memory for now, along with others that are sort of partially there or have been altered. Next slide. And some, there were just tiny little bits left over. There was some really nice bubbling and sort of caramelization and cracking that happened with the images. I was casting onto them in stacks of photographs so that the hot metal had a chance to cool down as it was burning and form different layers of alteration. If you go to the next slide, I mentioned my background was in photography. So making the jump to metal casting was kind of strange, but then again, you're also just working with negative and positive. Instead of negative positive tones, it's negative positive space. but I was definitely still thinking about printing, like printing metal and printing, kind of capturing the texture of a flat surface. This is a cast iron and wood sculpture that I originally made at Franconia Sculpture Park in 2015 when I met Rose. This is an image from Bemidji Sculpture Walk in northern Minnesota, where it now lives, next to Lake Bemidji and the Mississippi River. So the center piece that looks like a stretched hide is cast iron. And if you go to the next image, the detail and the actual surface texture was created from plants that I collected around the sculpture park, in their prairie restoration area. So in the center, there's a big milkweed pod. There's red clover, echinacea, all sorts of native prairie pollinating plants. So I was thinking of this as a snapshot also of that time that I was in residence, and the all the plants that were alive during that time. And I grew up surrounded by hunters and fishermen. So many of you who know me know that I'm a hunter, although that wasn't always the case. I didn't kind of come back around to that until my mid 20s. So this looks like a stretched hide. It looks kind of brutal from afar, but when you get up close, it's really a bunch of plants. Next slide. This is called Vicarious / Fell. And there was sort of all these cascading events of loss. After my dad passed away, my uncle sold off a bunch of the trees on our cabin property. And this is a place that I knew like the back of my hand and had existed with those trees for 20 some years. I also kind of wanted to know what that felt like who were these people coming in, cutting down the trees? You know, they had no personal stake in it, but so I cut down a couple trees, cast one of them. This is a 6-foot section of a tree trunk that's cast in iron. It was originally made for my thesis show, and it sort of became like a resurrection, or like wanting to like prop up and honor this tree again for the life that it had, and to come to terms with that loss. This is at the University of Minnesota in Morris, where I went to undergrad, although this was originally made for my graduate MFA thesis exhibition. Next slide. So like Maria mentioned, I also was raised Catholic, and materials and sort of relicism and reliquary and like sentimentality of materials also kind of resonates with me. These are the coals and ashes from some of those trees that were cut around my cabin, and a deer hide that I tanned, sort of acting as like a shroud, or pseudo campfire size, but acting as like a shroud for these cremated remains of all of these trees that I lost that were also important figures in my life. Next slide. I've also worked a lot with wasp nests, wasps or hornets. Several species of the wasp family create these paper nests. You may see them hanging around. They're like gray paper, kind of head shaped, hanging the trees and eaves of people's houses. These are cast iron wasp nests. Next slide. And I grew up surrounded by wasp nests. My mother decorated our house with wasp nests. So there were probably 10 or 12 of them hanging up in the corners all around the room. And that's something that I have collected and used and peeled apart as a material. And more recently, I've really been using the wasp hives for collage work, and haven't been doing a lot of metal casting. Like Jenny said, it's just really hard on the body, and a lot of things are catching up with me even after just a handful of years. So I'm trying to take care of myself a little more after these past few years, and the paper and the peeling is kind of just a really lovely, like obsessive and meditative way of interacting with a material that has been kind of present throughout my whole life. So this is a collage of wasp nest paper that has been peeled apart and applied to a large piece of plywood. The pink is from beetroot powder. And I've also spent a couple years working on a farm. And so plants and beets and plant colors and materials are important to me as well. Next slide. That's what I've got. This is a 16 millimeter negative also of wasp nest paper that was photogrammed in the darkroom, and it's a still from a moving film of the wasp hive texture being pulled through the projector. And I just want to say thanks.
Thank you so much, Amber. That is absolutely gorgeous work. And we are going to have Q&A. So anyone who is in the chat live, feel free to ask all of our artists or one particular artist questions as it relates to their work around material memory or around their experiences with memory loss, if they're comfortable sharing about that. And I am just going to go over again that we had 2 other panels that are both on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back. These are both phenomenal panels as well. And then I really encourage everyone to check out the Collective Memory exhibition on the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project's website. It is a stunning collection of artwork, ranging from glass and metal work to video and performance work. Really beautiful and conceptually strong artwork in this exhibition. So thank you for all of the artists who have submitted work for that and shared so intimately their experiences around memory. And then this is just the last little thing I wanted to introduce, and we'll get to other opportunities because these artists all have amazing things going on and amazing products. But I am currently an artist in residence with the Memory Maker Project, which is a New York-based organization that does a lot of virtual programming right now during the pandemic with older adults and the memory loss community. And we will be partnering with Maria, who is the owner or co-owner of Maple Marrow at B&T Farms, to do a maple tasting with some of the participants over Zoom. We'll also do a couple of educational snippets that will be available to the general public on the Alzheimer's Glass and Iron Project's website, as well as social media pages. So just stay tuned for that. We're going to set a date within the next week, and then we'll have advertising through the months of May regarding Maple in May. And with that, I'm going to stop the share. We can always pull back up images if artists want to talk about a particular piece. And I am just going to log into the YouTube page, and I am seeing a lot of very beautiful praise, beautiful work and insight. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely powerful collection of artworks. Thank you so much. So we've got a lot of thank yous. If anyone wants to put any questions in the chat, please do so at this time. But one of the things I would like to comment on was, Amber, I had no idea the history of wasp nests and your work. That was really a beautiful an intricate detail of your life that I had no idea about. And that's more of a comment than a question, but.
Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty bizarre to look back at some photos of my mom's house and to just see these wasp nests hanging in the corner. But I guess it just, the appreciation of that material came before me, you know, it was just always around.
And I also encourage any of the artists, if you have questions for one another, please ask away as well. Don't be shy. But one of the things that I also noticed, and then I swear I will ask the question, was that everyone had at least one piece in this panel that really kind of related back to memory loss in some way. And Jenny, I had not seen that piece that you made in homage to your grandfather and that memory of your broken down car and him coming to see you. And that I loved kind of the pixelation. It really, to me as a visual artist, looked like the distortion of memory. Like there was once a clear memory there and it had shifted in some way. So that I just wanted to note what another really material poetic way of encapsulating memory loss in a medium.
Thank you, Rose. Yeah, I definitely think that playing with the digital, like using digital tools is a way to disconnect a little bit from the material in a similar way, I would say, to how our minds work. And yeah, I think that I've always been amazed at how little information or connection you can have with something to have an idea in your head. And so I guess I really play with that when I'm working with sculpture or photography or drawing. Is just I don't know, you're just trying to reveal what's in your mind as opposed to what you see. And I think you can just play back and forth with that. So I appreciated using that tool.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And we have a question from South Shore Arts for all of you. How do you feel that your process of creating is connected with your process of healing? What a beautiful question.
I'll start. Yeah, so the process of making is highly connected to my process of healing. Making those pieces really, for me, made those memories tangible and those experiences tangible. I really was able to put them into the world. I think as artists, we always think about making, and we're making these objects for others to view and share with us and share our story. So it's highly connected for me. And another thing that I'm pursuing right now is a master's in mental health counseling. So I'm really getting into concepts of memory and the mind and how everything functions and is connected. So I'm really excited to add therapeutic processes to my work.
And I'll say that for me, I mean, you can kind of tell visually, but at the time that my dad passed away and my mom was early in her diagnosis, you know, I just wanted to burn stuff. I mean, when you can't process something verbally, you have to do it physically or visually. And now I don't feel that need. I feel like I can use material and kind of explore other ideas. I don't feel compelled to make the same type of work that was so like visually or physically destructive to material or to myself. But yeah, I think it's very connected.
Yeah, and I would say that to be able to make something that's in your mind physical is kind of a release. And for me, I don't know that the images so much as when I am making, it's very meditative. And so there's just something about feeling material, looking at material and letting it speak to you, and not in a weird way, but just in a, it really brings you to the present moment. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about the past, and it replays in my mind over and over and over and over. And so when I'm making, I don't do that. I'm just really looking at what I have right in front of me. So it's therapeutic or meditative in that way.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I am seeing another question in the chat from Sapphire Tide. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I've heard of experiences like music and smell being used as therapies to help individuals with memory loss. Have you researched how the physical arts can help soothe people with Alzheimer's as well? Yes, that is definitely something that I have heavily researched, and I know that in the field, Maria has come out with me a lot to actually lead arts and creation workshops in care communities as well as in the communities at large. And we are not trained art therapists. There is a ton of research around the art therapies, which is a actual medical profession. We think of ourselves more as community educators, arts educators. I particularly have had a 10-year career bringing arts and cultural engagement into the memory care community. So I definitely think of myself as a creative aging educator. But there are so many benefits. And for one of the reasons Alzheimer's Glass and Iron really started was to create intergenerational connections between college age students that was at Alfred University and older adults in care communities in the Southern Tier. And there was a lot of community and connection made. But in that experience too, we were working with people who had later stages of dementia or Alzheimer's disease who may have not been verbal or able to verbalize anymore. And so the visual arts are an amazing way to communicate once that verbal communication is no longer accessible. They're also a great way, of course, we're not art therapists, so we're not looking for a direct outcome, but they're also a great way for people to process emotions, for people to relax if they're agitated or if they are depressed or anxious. There's a lot of really amazing benefits to arts engagement. So yes, 100%. I obviously have committed quite a bit of time to that intersection of arts and older adults with a memory loss diagnosis, and I cannot speak enough to the benefits. And right now, of course, we'll be having like collaborations with the Memory Maker Project, but a lot of the work I am doing as a visual artist right now is with the Memory Maker Project, and our programming is open and accessible, it's intergenerational, and it's free of charge. So if you're interested in seeing how an intergenerational arts experience in the community can be positive, I really encourage you to come to one of our programs. And we are just the Memory Maker Project. You can Google us and find us pretty easily.
Rose, I can add on to that too. So in my master's work in mental health counseling, art therapy is deeply rooted in Jungian theory, which is based on identity and the sense of self. So that directly circles back to memory and making and working with that through those art therapy practices. So that sense of identity within oneself is directly connected to memory.
Thank you so much, Maria. I am so excited about Maria's continued education and how she's going to really bring the scientific and clinical aspect into Alzheimer's Glass and Iron moving forward. I'm seeing a comment.
You're muted, Rose.
Thank you. I know a year on Zoom and I still sometimes don't unmute myself. But if you are watching live and you have any last minute questions, please put those into the chat. Now we're gonna wrap up in the next 10 minutes or so. But I am seeing another comment in the chat from South Shore Arts. Amber, I completely relate to your description of healing. When my mom passed away, I started tearing up a lot of paper in my artwork, similar to you wanting to burn stuff, so cathartic. And I think I might ask a question in relation to that comment, which is there one medium that you find that you work with for everyone on this panel that is that cathartic release, or kind of just that that one medium that allows you to kind of express your emotions, or it may be multiple mediums? I know a lot of you are working in mixed medias.
I could say right now I'm really working a lot with wasp hives with the paper nests. Um, Also, I thought about this, Maria, when you were talking about building your home. I mean, the material of a wasp nest is their home. Um, so you'll see wasps in the summertime, like scratching with their big mandibles on wood, and they're basically making paper. Um, Chew it up and spit it out in these delicate little lines, and you can see little wood fibers that they've used to construct their house. And so I think about that. I think about the ideas of home and like making my own home, and just kind of working through all of those layers of that material. And I should say that no wasps were harmed. They don't overwinter. They die. The queens hibernate. They come back. So winter is really the perfect time to go out and collect wasp hives without any danger of being stung.
Thank you for adding in that humanitarian and eco-friendly aspect of your work, Amber. And I absolutely love your castings of the wasp hives as well, kind of that interior hive. Absolutely beautiful. Ooh, show and tell. Not that this whole presentation hasn't been sort of a show and tell. Everyone has so many amazing things to tell. I'm going to check the chat for any more questions, but if anyone has any last minute questions, please put them in the chat. But we have a really phenomenal group of individuals here who have so many opportunities and are also like incredible makers, where we've seen a lot of their fine art practice tonight, but they also make in other ways as well. Amber, could you do a plug for your Etsy? And I will do a testimonial as well once you're done with that.
Sure. So as a byproduct, or sort of in conjunction with hunting, since about 2013, I collect the tallow and render down the tallow from the deer that I've killed, in an effort to try to use as much of it as possible. And I've also, throughout that process, realized and learned about how great of a moisturizer it is. And so I make things with tallow. I've used it as a sealant for metal before. I've used it on collage work, but I also just use it on my body. And yeah, I have some collage work online. So it's tangledantlers.etsy.com, and you can find antler jewelry, tallow, skin products, collage, bits and bobs.
Definitely check out her antler jewelry is beautiful, and all of her original artwork is absolutely stunning. But I cannot get enough of. Ooh, the light's not great for these. I cannot get enough of her tallow bombs. They are absolutely exquisite. As we're going through the change of seasons, they are a luxurious gift for yourself or others, and they are so economically priced to fit any budget. So I really encourage you to support Amber on her Etsy page. And then I'm also a sugar fiend. And I'm going to have Maria plug her maple next.
Yeah, so Rose, when you asked about what material I love the best, it's dirt. I love dirt, making in it, making from it. And I think farming was like the most like next logical step for me. So with the maple farm, we are maple marrow at B&T Farms, myself and my partner. It's all made right here in Hornell, and Hornell is actually the Maple City in New York. So local maple right from Hornell, New York. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Maple Marrow at B&T Farms. And we also are a New York State licensed maple farm with New York State maple.
Awesome. And Maria, I don't know, so that's a great pitch for maple, and I cannot speak enough to how robust and delicious Maria's maple is. And the sugar season just ended, so get it while it's fresh. But But Maria, do you also want to, for anyone who's maybe thinking of going back to graduate school, who's maybe a visual artist here, or maybe is a parent or family member of someone who is a teenager who's thinking about art school, do you want to plug Alfred?
Yeah, so that's my job. My career is I work in admissions. I'm an admissions counselor, and I would do all arts enrollment for the School of Art and Design at Alfred University. So if you're looking for a truly interdisciplinary curriculum where you can get your hands dirty in a wide variety of mediums, definitely contact me. I'm happy to tell you more about our BFA programs or MFA programs, post-bac or summer workshops. Just email me. It's my last name, Bentley, Bentley, at alfred.edu.
And you'll be able to find Maria pretty easily if you just do a search of Alfred University. She is one of the admissions counselors, and you'll be able to find her by her image. And I know we have other artist opportunities on this call as well. Jenny, do you want to fill us in about where Salem Artworks is and if there's opportunities for the general public there this summer, aside from visiting their absolutely incredible and expansive sculpture park that I believe has been open to the public throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, so I work at Salem Artworks, which is just an hour north of Albany. We're right on the Vermont border. So yes, it's a great day visit to walk around the trails. We also are opening up this season for workshops, shop rentals, residencies, and youth programs. So if you're in the area and want to participate in a program, we would love to have you. My email is j.hillenbrand@salemartworks.org. So you can email me directly or find me through the info email, which is way easier. But on our website, we have upcoming workshops. So you just go right on to there, salemartworks.org. Yeah, so very exciting.
It is an absolutely gorgeous sculpture park, amazing artist in residency opportunity, Salem Artworks. I met Jenny through Alfred, and then our relationship really flourished at Salem Artworks, where we were both artists in residence when we first met, and then Jenny became staff, and we had a 5-year long relationship with residencies with the Alzheimer's Thousand Iron Project at Salem Artworks, and I can't speak highly enough to those opportunities that Saul presented us as emerging artists, and what an amazing opportunity it was to work with the care communities in the region, as well as some of the youth in the region through our Memory Bubble workshops. So we love Salem Artworks. Thank you so much to Saul and to especially Jenny for being so fabulous during all of our residencies and programming there. And then Amber, am I correct in believing that you have an exhibition coming up in Wisconsin?
Oh yeah, later this summer. There's a new gallery in St. Croix Falls called the What Gallery, founded by Elizabeth West and AJ Meadows, and Jonas Lindberg and I will be showing work together in their gallery space. I don't know the exact dates yet, but I think it's the end of July.
Stay updated. And yeah, if you are following us on social media, I have linked to all of these artists' Instagram pages or personal profiles. We are accessible to answer questions, or especially for residency opportunities, or if you want to purchase maple or antler jewelry, this is the crew for you. So thank you so much if you are joining us live tonight. I don't see any other additional questions in the chat, and I just want to thank everyone for being so open and candid about your personal experiences with memory loss in your lives. I know that's not at all an easy subject to talk about, and for all of you, I'm so sorry that you've become a part of the memory loss community and have lost a loved one to Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. I think it's I think Maria said it really poetically when she was talking about her burnout, where the form is still there, the individual's still there. It's it's what's inside that it seems fleeting. So again, if you have any questions about Alzheimer's disease or dementia, I also encourage you can reach out to me. I am a member of the Hudson Valley Young Professional Alzheimer's Council, which is a junior board of the Alzheimer's Association of the Hudson Valley. And I can't speak highly enough to the Alzheimer's Association. They have so many amazing services, programs, and resources that are free of charge. And they are really leading the way in the science behind ending the Alzheimer's crisis that will soon be a pandemic unless we are able to find some kind of cure or way to slow this disease down. But by 2050, it is projected that this will be a pandemic, Alzheimer's. So with that, I want to thank everyone for, again, sharing your art practice with us this evening. Again, for any audience who's watching after, stay connected with us and make sure to check out that Collective Memory exhibition online. And we'll continue having virtual opportunities throughout the summertime. So continue to stay involved with us. And then again, thank you all so much for sharing with us this evening. Have a great